The alarm screamed through the Galactic Council chamber, a sound that made every alien species present freeze in terror. Ambassador Kangde watched from the human observation deck as the massive holographic display flickered to life in the center of the room. A face appeared, thin and pale, with large black eyes that seemed to swim with liquid. The creature's mouth opened and closed rapidly, the translator struggling to keep up with its panicked words. "Please, anyone who can hear this message. We are dying. The Krell have come to the Sara Prime. They are consuming everything. Our ships are destroyed. Our defenses have fallen. We have 2 million civilians trapped in the capital city. Please, we beg the Council. Send help. Send anyone." The message cut off abruptly, replaced by images of a planet under siege. Kang leaned forward, his hands gripping the railing. He could see massive organic ships in orbit, their surfaces pulsing with sickly light. On the ground, a dark mass spread across the continents like oil on water. It moved and writhed, consuming forests and cities alike. The Velner people, those fragile mollusk-like beings, were being hunted by creatures that looked like nightmares. Down in the council chamber, representatives from dozens of species began speaking at once. The Dorvathi ambassador, an insectoid creature with golden wings, clicked its mandibles nervously. "The Krell swarm has not been seen in this sector for 3 centuries. We thought them extinct." A Krellan representative, its crystalline body refracting light into rainbow patterns, hummed thoughtfully. "The Velner cannot be saved. The Krell do not negotiate. They do not stop. They consume until nothing remains. We must accept this loss and reinforce our borders." Kang felt his jaw tighten. He pressed the communication button on his wrist device. "This is Ambassador Kang of Earth. I request permission to address the Council." The chamber fell silent. Every eye, stalk, and sensor turned toward the human observation deck. The High Mediator, a floating sphere of contained plasma, pulsed softly. "The human wishes to speak. We grant permission." Kang descended the stairs to the main floor. He could feel the weight of their stares. Humans had been part of the Council for 30 years, but they were still outsiders. Still, the strange creatures from the Forbidden's death world. He stood before the assembled aliens and spoke clearly. "Earth will send aid to the Sara Prime." A wave of chittering, humming, and clicking swept through the chamber. The Dorvathi ambassador's wings fluttered in agitation. "Ambassador Kang, with respect, your species does not understand what you are offering. The Krell are a force of nature. They feel no pain. They know no fear. They exist only to consume and reproduce. The Velner military, small as it was, lasted only 3 days. What can your ships possibly do?" Kang met the alien's multifaceted gaze. "We can try." The Thorian representative, a massive reptilian warrior covered in scarred plates, growled low. "The Thorian Empire will not commit forces to this suicide mission. We have fought the Krell before. The cost was devastating. The humans are naive to think their small fleet can make a difference." The High Mediator pulsed brighter. "The Council advises against human intervention. Your species comes from a high-gravity world with dangerous conditions. You do not understand the nature of civilized warfare. The Krell will destroy you." Kang felt a cold smile touch his lips. Civilized warfare. Is that why 2 million Velner are about to die? Because civilized species don't fight when it's too dangerous? He turned slowly, looking at each representative. "Earth has faced extinction dozens of times. Ice ages, plagues, predators that hunted us in the dark. We survived because we learned to fight when there was no hope. If that makes us uncivilized, then so be it." He tapped his wrist device again, connecting directly to Earth Defense Command. "This is Ambassador Kang, authorization code Delta 77. I need a battle group prepared for immediate deployment to Galactic Sector 41. The Velner Republic requires emergency assistance against a Krell swarm incursion." The response came within seconds. "Acknowledged, Ambassador. Captain Yuri Nam of the destroyer Indomitable is already preparing her crew. She have 2 support frigates ready within the hour. Total deployment force of 847 personnel." The council chamber erupted in chaos. The Dorvathi ambassador's wings buzzed frantically. This is madness. 800 soldiers against millions of Krell? You are sending your people to their deaths. Kang turned back to face them. Captain Nam volunteered. Every single member of her crew volunteered. That's something you need to understand about humans. We don't abandon people who need help, even if it costs us everything. The High Mediator dimmed slightly, a sign of concern. If you proceed with this action, the Council cannot guarantee support or rescue. You will be on your own. We're used to that, Kang said quietly, 3 hours later. Kang stood in the docking bay of the human embassy station, watching as Captain Yuri Nam approached. She was tall for a human woman, with short black hair and eyes that seemed to calculate everything they saw. Behind her, Marines in combat gear loaded equipment onto transport shuttles. The insignia of Earth Defense Command was painted on every surface, a blue planet wrapped in silver branches. Captain Nam, Kang said, extending his hand. She shook it firmly. Ambassador, I've reviewed the Velner distress call and all available intelligence on the Krell, my tactical team estimates. We have 3 weeks before the Sara Prime's last city falls completely. Her voice was calm, professional. We won't let that happen. The Council thinks you're insane for accepting this mission. Yuri smiled, and there was something fierce in it. The Council has never fought for survival. They've never had to. But humans? We've been fighting since we crawled out of the oceans. The Krell don't know what they're facing. Kang watched as the last of the supplies were loaded. The Indomitable was a sleek vessel, built for speed and firepower. The 2 support frigates, Tempest and Valiant, flanked it like hunting wolves. They didn't look like the elegant, curved ships of other species. They looked brutal and efficient, designed by people who understood war. Bring them home, Captain, Kang said. Yuri saluted. We'll bring everyone home, sir. The Velner and our people. That's a promise. As the ships undocked and their engines flared to life, Kang returned to his office and opened a channel to the Velner ambassador, Illith. The creature appeared on screen, its face streaked with what might have been tears. Ambassador Illith, human ships are en route to the Sara Prime. They will arrive in 3 weeks. Illith's large eyes widened. The Council said no one would come. They said we were already dead. Humans have a saying, Kang replied. We don't leave anyone behind. Tell your people to hold on. Help is coming. As the channel closed, Kang looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 847 humans were flying toward a battle that every civilized species said was impossible to win. He thought about the Council's words, about civilized warfare, about the cost being too high. Then he thought about Earth, about a species that had clawed its way to the top of a world that tried to kill them every single day, about people who didn't know how to quit. The Krell were about to learn what happened when you threatened, something a Deathworlder decided to protect, and Kang almost felt sorry for them. The Indomitable dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sara system, and Captain Yuri Nam felt her stomach drop at what she saw. The bridge crew fell silent as the displays lit up with data. Debris filled the orbital space around the planet, pieces of Velner ships spinning slowly in the void. Some were still leaking atmosphere. Some still had power, their lights blinking weakly like dying fireflies. Captain, I'm reading 17 Krell bioships in close orbit, Lieutenant Hannah reported from the tactical station. Her voice was steady, but her fingers moved rapidly across the controls. Another 34 smaller craft attacking the remaining evacuation ships. Surface scans show the Krell biomass has covered 42% of the landmass. Yuri studied the main display. The planet below looked sick. Dark purple and black growth spread across continents like a disease. In some places she could see it moving, pulsing like a living thing. Because it was a living thing. The entire Krell swarm was one massive organism, thinking and hunting as a single entity. Communications, get me the Velner ground command. Static crackled for a moment, then a weak voice came through. This is the Sara ground command. Identify yourself. This is Captain Yuri Nam of Earth Defense Command, Destroyer Indomitable. We received your distress call. We're here to help. There was a long pause. Then the voice came back, trembling. Earth? The Deathworld sent ships? How many battle groups do you have? One, Yuri said simply. Us, another pause. Captain, we appreciate the gesture, but one ship cannot stand against the swarm. You should save yourselves while you can. Yuri looked at her crew. They stared back at her with determined faces. Lieutenant Hannah nodded once. Commander Wu, who stood near the doorway in his combat armor, cracked his knuckles. The sound was loud in the quiet bridge. Ground command, we didn't fly 3 weeks through space to turn around. Tell us where you need us most. While the Velner commander explained their situation, Yuri pulled up the tactical display. The last Velner city, home to 2.3 million civilians, sat on the northern continent. The Krell had surrounded it on 3 sides, and the biomass was creeping closer every hour. The Velner had maybe 4 days before the city was overrun. Commander Wu, Yuri said, turning to the tall man in armor. How fast can you get your Marines ready? Wu smiled, and it wasn't a kind expression. They've been ready since we left Earth, Captain. 200 Marines, full combat load, can be on the ground in 90 minutes. Make it 60. We need to establish a defensive line before the Krell realize we're here. She turned back to the main display. Tempest Valiant, form up on our flanks. We're going to clear a path through orbital space so those evacuation ships can get out. The 2 frigates acknowledged and moved into position. The 3 human ships looked small compared to the massive Krell bio-vessels, but they cut through space with predatory grace. Yuri had served in the Defense Command for 15 years. She'd fought pirates and rogue mining drones and once, memorably, an entire asteroid full of aggressive silicon-based life forms. But she'd never fought anything like this. All weapons hot, she ordered. Target the closest bioship. Let's announce our arrival. The Indomitable's main railgun spun up with a whine that vibrated through the hull. Then it fired. The tungsten rod, accelerated to a fraction of light speed, crossed the distance in seconds and punched through the Krell ship's organic hull. The bioship convulsed, fluid spraying into space. Its surface rippled and then it began to break apart. Direct hit, Hannah reported. The bioship is dying. Target the next one. Keep firing. For the next hour, the human ships carved through the Krell orbital forces like knives through flesh. The bioships were tough, their hulls designed to absorb damage and regenerate. But human weapons were designed to kill things that didn't want to die. Railguns tore through organic armor. Plasma cannons burned clean holes through vital organs. Missile clusters exploded inside biological systems, spreading fire and destruction. The Galactic Council had observers monitoring the battle through quantum links, watching from their safe stations. Yuri could imagine their horror as they witnessed human warfare. Council species fought with precision and care, trying to minimize damage and casualties. Humans fought to win. They used overwhelming force. They targeted weak points. They adapted and improvised and never, ever gave up. By the time Commander Wu's drop pods launched toward the surface, 17 Krell bioships were dead or dying in orbit. The evacuation ships, those fragile Velner transports, were finally able to break away and flee toward the outer system. Wu stood in his drop pod, surrounded by his Marines. The pod shook as it hit the atmosphere, heat building up outside until the metal glowed red. He checked his rifle, a heavy weapon that fired armor-piercing rounds designed to punch through reinforced steel. Around him, his Marines did the same. They were quiet, focused. This was what they trained for. The pods hit the ground like meteors, dirt and debris exploding outward. The hatches blew off and Wu stepped out into an alien world. The gravity was heavier than Earth, 1.4 times standard. He felt it in his legs and back, a constant pressure. But humans were built for heavy gravity. This was nothing. The Velner city rose in the distance. Delicate towers of pale crystal and organic curves. Beautiful, fragile, between Wu and the city. The ground was covered in Krell biomass. It pulsed and writhed, a carpet of purple and black flesh that seemed to breathe. And on top of it, moving toward them, were the Krell warriors. They looked like nightmares given form. 4 legs, each ending in razor-sharp claws. Heads that were mostly mouth, filled with concentric rings of teeth. No eyes, but sensory organs that pulsed with bioluminescence. They moved fast, faster than anything that size should move. Form defensive line. Wu shouted. Automated turrets forward. Mines behind us. Nothing gets through? Lieutenant Hannah worked quickly, her fingers flying as she set up the defense network. Turrets rose from their deployment cases, their sensors locking onto targets. Mines buried themselves in the dirt, waiting for pressure triggers. The Marines spread out, taking positions behind portable barriers. The Krell charged. Wu had fought in urban combat zones on Earth. He'd cleared terrorist strongholds and stopped riots, and once spent 3 days hunting a rogue AI through a collapsing arcology. But he'd never seen anything charged with such single-minded purpose. The Krell didn't slow down, didn't dodge. They just ran straight at the human line like a living tsunami. Open fire! The sound was deafening. 200 rifles firing at once, each round traveling at supersonic speeds. The front line of Krell warriors simply exploded, their bodies torn apart by the kinetic impact. But more came behind them. Always more. The turrets added their fire, tracking and shooting with mechanical precision. Mines detonated as Krell warriors stepped on them, sending bodies flying through the air, and still they came. Hold the line? Wu roared. He fired his rifle in controlled bursts, each shot taking down a Krell next to him. A young Marine named Hen took a hit from a Krell that had gotten too close. The creature's claw raked across his armor, leaving deep gouges. Han stumbled, went down on one knee. Wu thought he was done, but Han pushed himself back up. He switched his rifle to full auto and emptied the entire magazine into the Krell that had hit him. The creature fell, and Han reloaded with shaking hands. Still here, Commander, he gasped. Wu felt a surge of pride. That was the difference. Humans got hurt and kept fighting. They got knocked down and stood back up. Earth had taught them that survival meant pushing through pain. Through fear, through everything, the Krell wave broke against the human line like water against stone. Bodies piled up, creating a wall of dead flesh. The attack finally slowed, then stopped. The survivors retreated back into the biomass, regrouping for another assault. Wu looked at his Marines. They were breathing hard, some bleeding from minor wounds, but they were all standing. All ready. Behind them, at the city wall, he could see Velner civilians watching. Their large eyes were wide with shock. The radio crackled. Ground team, this is indomitable. We're reading your position. How did you do against the first wave? Wu keyed his mic. We held, Captain. Krell casualties estimated at 4,000. Our casualties, 0 fatalities, 3 wounded who are already back in position. He paused. These things don't scare easy, but neither do we. From orbit, Yuri watched the tactical display. The human position held firm, a small blue dot surrounded by red. The Krell were regrouping for another assault. This was going to be a long fight. But as she looked at that blue dot, she felt something she couldn't quite name. Pride, maybe? Or hope all ships maintain orbital superiority. Ground team, we've got your back. Hold that line. In the Council observation chamber, the alien representatives watched in silence. The Dorvathi ambassador's wings had stopped fluttering. The Quellan scholar's light had dimmed to almost nothing. They had expected the humans to die in the first minutes. Instead, they had watched Deathworlders do what they did best: fight, survive, win, and the battle had only just begun. 3 days passed like a nightmare that wouldn't end. Commander Wu stood at the defensive line, watching the horizon where the Krell biomass pulsed and grew. His armor was scorched and dented. His rifle had been replaced twice. Around him, the Marines held their positions with grim determination. They had fought off 7 major assaults. 7 times the Krell had charged their line in waves of claws and teeth and fury. 7 times the humans had thrown them back, but the cost was mounting. 23 Marines were dead, their bodies wrapped and placed in the makeshift morgue behind the city walls. 67 more were wounded, though most refused to leave the line. Wu watched as Private Han, his left arm in a sling from a Krell claw that had torn through his armor, checked his rifle with his good hand. The kid should be in medical. Instead, he was preparing for the next wave. Han, you should rest, Wu said. Han looked at him with tired eyes. With respect, Commander, I can still shoot. That's all that matters. That was the thing about humans that other species didn't understand. Pain didn't stop them. Fear didn't stop them. They kept going because giving up wasn't in their nature. Earth had spent millions of years teaching humanity that the only way to survive was to fight through everything. The radio crackled. Ground team, this is Dr. Su in medical. I need to speak with Commander Wu. Wu switched channels. Go ahead, Doctor. Commander, I've been analyzing the Krell biology from the specimens we've collected. I think I found something important. Can you come to the medical station? Wu left Lieutenant Hanna in command and made his way back to the city. The Velner had given them a large building near the wall for medical operations. Inside, Dr. Su stood over a table covered in Krell tissue samples. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, but there was excitement in her expression. Look at this, she said, pointing to a display showing cellular structures. The Krell aren't individual organisms. They're all connected through a neural network like a biological internet. Every warrior, every piece of biomass, it's all linked back to central nodes. Wu studied the image. So if we destroy these nodes, the swarm in this area should become disorganized, confused. It won't stop them. But it'll give us an advantage. She pulled up another image. This one showing a massive organic structure buried in the biomass about 20 kilometers from the city. This is the primary node for this region. I call it the Hive Nexus. It's coordinating all the attacks against the city. How do we kill it? Su smiled grimly. Lots of explosives. 2 hours later, Wu stood with 12 Marines in full combat gear. They were the best fighters he had, veterans who had seen action on 3 continents back on Earth. Lieutenant Myra, a woman who had once held off an entire pirate crew by herself, checked her plasma charges. Private Jin, despite his young age, had proven himself fearless in every battle. This is a suicide mission, Wu told them honestly. We're going 20 kilometers into Krell territory, destroying their command node and hopefully fighting our way back out. Anyone who wants to stay behind, no judgment. Nobody moved. Jin spoke up, his voice calm. Commander, we volunteered for this mission knowing we might not come home. If destroying that node saves the Velner and the rest of our team, then it's worth it. Wu felt that pride again. All right. We move fast and quiet. Save your ammunition for when we need it. The goal is the Nexus, nothing else. Let's move. They left the city through a service tunnel that came out beyond the defensive line. The moment they emerged into Krell territory, everything changed. The ground beneath their feet wasn't dirt anymore. It was biomass, spongy and wet, that squelched with every step. The air smelled like rotting meat and chemicals. In the distance, they could see Krell warriors patrolling, their bioluminescent organs casting eerie light. The team moved like ghosts through the alien landscape. Their armor had active camouflage that bent light around them, making them nearly invisible. When they did encounter Krell patrols, they killed quickly and silently, using knives and suppressors. Every body was dragged off the path and hidden in the biomass. After 3 hours of careful movement, they reached the Nexus. Wu had seen a lot of disturbing things in his career, but this was different. The structure was massive, easily 50 meters tall, built from living tissue and bone-like structures. It pulsed with a rhythm like a heartbeat. Veins as thick as trees ran across its surface, pumping dark fluid. And at the base, warrior-class Krell stood guard, dozens of them. We need to get inside and place the charges at the core, Wu whispered. Myra, Jin, you're with me. The rest provide covering fire when things go loud. They crept closer, using the biomass terrain for cover. When they were within 20 meters, Wu gave the signal. The Marines opened fire from concealed positions, their rifles tearing through the guards. Wu and his team sprinted for the entrance, a sphincter-like opening in the Nexus wall. Inside was worse than outside. The walls were made of flesh that glistened with moisture. The floor moved beneath them, responding to their weight. Strange organs hung from the ceiling, pulsing with light and sound. It was like being inside a living creature because that's exactly what it was. There, Myra pointed to a central chamber where a massive organ throbbed, surrounded by neural clusters that sparked with bioluminescent signals. That's the brain. They moved forward, placing plasma charges on the neural clusters. Each charge had enough power to vaporize steel. Jin worked quickly, his training overriding his fear. Outside, they could hear the sound of gunfire intensifying. The Krell were responding to the attack. That's when Jin made a mistake. His hand slipped as he placed a charge and he fell against one of the organ walls. Immediately the flesh reacted. It opened, spraying him with acidic fluid. Jin screamed as the acid ate through his armor. Burning his skin, Wu grabbed him and pulled him back, but the damage was done. Jin's chest was covered in chemical burns, the acid still sizzling. Any other species would have died instantly. But Jin had emergency medical nanites in his bloodstream. Standard issue for human soldiers operating in extreme environments. The nanites went to work immediately, neutralizing the acid and sealing wounds. "I'm okay," Jin gasped. "Finish the job." They placed the last charges and activated them. 5-minute timer. They had to get out. The run back through the Nexus was chaos. Krell warriors had filled the passages, responding to the intrusion. The Marines fired as they ran, their weapons cutting down anything in their path. Myra took a claw to the leg but kept moving, supported by another Marine. They'd burst out of the Nexus into a killing field. At least 100 Krell surrounded them. The Marines formed a circle, firing in all directions. Their ammunition was running low. They were outnumbered and cut off from support. This was where they would make their stand. Wu keyed his radio. "Captain Nam, if you can hear this, the charges are set. If we don't make it back, it's been an honor." "Negative, Commander," Yuri's voice came back, sharp and clear. "Look up." Wu looked up and saw 3 shapes dropping from the sky. Drop pods, coming in fast and hard. They hit the ground like bombs and the hatches exploded outward. 50 more Marines poured out, their weapons blazing. The reinforcements tore through the Krell lines, creating an opening. "Move! Move!" Lieutenant Hannah's voice screamed over the radio. She was leading the rescue team. Her rifle firing in precise bursts, Wu's team ran for the opening, the 2 groups linking up. Together, they fought their way back toward the defensive line. Behind them, the timer reached 0. The explosion was visible from orbit. The Hive Nexus simply ceased to exist, vaporized in a massive fireball. The shockwave flattened the biomass for a kilometer in every direction. And across the entire region, every Krell warrior suddenly stopped moving. They stood frozen for a moment, then began moving erratically, like puppets with cut strings. "Ground team, we're reading massive disorganization in the Krell forces," Yuri reported from the Indomitable. "Whatever you did, it worked." Wu and his team made it back to the defensive line as the sun was setting. They had lost no one. Though Jin was in serious condition and Myra would need surgery, Dr. Su met them at the medical station. Her face showing relief. In the city, the Velner civilians came to the walls to watch as the human Marines returned. They had seen these strange creatures fight for 3 days straight, never breaking, never surrendering. They had seen them walk into certain death and come back alive. And now they saw them celebrating their wounded, carrying their injured with gentle care, mourning their dead with quiet respect. One Velner elder approached Commander Wu. "How?" the alien asked simply. "How do your people keep fighting when any reasonable being would surrender?" Wu looked at the elder, then at his Marines. Han with his arm in a sling, still grinning. Myra being carried on a stretcher, giving thumbs up to her teammates. Jin in critical condition but stable, the nanites working to save his life. "Because Earth taught us that survival isn't about being the strongest or the smartest," Wu said. "It's about refusing to quit. It's about standing back up every time you get knocked down. The Krell are tough, but they've never faced anything that fights like humans fight. They've never met Deathworlders. That night, the Krell launched one more assault on the city. But without the Nexus coordinating them, they were disorganized and easy to repel. The Indomitable docked at Council Station exactly 8 days after leaving. The Sara Prime, Captain Yuri Nam, stood on the bridge, watching through the viewports as the massive station grew larger. It was beautiful in its own way, a structure of elegant curves and crystalline towers, built by species who valued art and harmony. So different from human stations, which were built for function and efficiency. "Captain, we're receiving docking clearance," Lieutenant Hanna reported. "Also, there are approximately 47 news drones waiting to record our arrival, and the Council has requested your immediate presence in the main chamber." Yuri sighed. She had known this was coming. The battle at the Sara Prime had been broadcast across the entire galaxy through quantum observation links. Every species had watched as humans fought with a brutality that shocked them. Now she would have to answer for it. Acknowledged. Have the crew prepare for station leave. They've earned rest. She paused. But keep security teams on standby? I have a feeling this won't be a friendly welcome. Ambassador Kang met her at the docking bay. He looked tired, lines of stress around his eyes. "Captain Nam, congratulations on your victory. The Velmer people are calling you saviors." "And the Council?" Yuri asked. "The Council is calling you dangerous." Kang gestured for her to follow. "The Dorvathi have filed a formal complaint about excessive use of force. The Quellan scholars are demanding an investigation into human military doctrine. Even some of our allies are concerned. They're saying humans fight like barbarians. They walk through the station corridors." Aliens of dozens of species stopped to stare at the human captain. Some looked curious. Others looked afraid. Yuri kept her expression neutral, her back straight. She had fought for 8 days with barely any sleep, watched 23 of her crew die, and saved 2 million lives. She wasn't going to apologize for that. The council chamber was packed. Every representative was present, along with observers from 100 different species. The holographic displays showed images from the battle. Human Marines firing their weapons. The Nexus exploding. Krell warriors being torn apart by railgun fire. It looked violent because it was violent. That was the reality of war. The High Mediator's plasma core pulsed brightly. "Captain Yuri Nam of Earth, you stand before this Council to answer questions about your conduct during the Sara Prime incident." "Incident?" Yuri said sharply. 2 million Velner were about to die. We saved them. I would call that a victory, not an incident. The Dorvathi ambassador's wings fluttered angrily. You used weapons of horrific power against living beings. Your soldiers showed no mercy, no restraint. This is not how civilized species conduct military operations. Civilized species abandon the Velner to die, Yuri shot back. We did what was necessary to save lives. If that makes us uncivilized, then I accept the label. A new voice spoke up. It was the Thorian representative, the massive reptilian warrior. The human speaks truth. The council refused to act. Only Earth had the courage to respond. He turned his scarred head toward Yuri. I have studied your battle records. Your tactics were brutal but effective. Your losses were surprisingly light given the circumstances. How did you achieve this? Yuri met his gaze. We trained for it. Every human in my crew has spent years preparing for combat in extreme conditions. We practice fighting when we're injured, exhausted, outnumbered. Because that's what Earth taught us. Our planet tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We learned to fight back. Dr. Su stepped forward from the observation area. If I may speak, Council, I conducted extensive analysis of the Krell biology during the battle. They are a hive organism designed for consumption and reproduction. They feel no pain, show no mercy, and cannot be negotiated with. The only way to stop them was through decisive military action. The humans provided that action. The Quellan representative, its crystalline form refracting rainbow light, hummed thoughtfully. Dr. Su, your species developed biological weapons during the conflict. specifically a pathogen targeting Krell neural clusters. Is this correct? Sue nodded. Yes, it was a tactical necessity. The pathogen was designed to disrupt their command structure, not to cause suffering. The Krell are not recognized as sentient beings under Council law, so there was no legal violation. But it demonstrates a dangerous mindset, the Quellan insisted. Humans are willing to use any weapon, any tactic to achieve victory. This makes them unpredictable, dangerous. Commander Wu, who had been standing silently near the back, walked forward. His combat armor had been replaced with a formal uniform, but he still moved like a soldier. You want to talk about dangerous? Let me tell you what's dangerous. Dangerous is watching 2 million civilians wait to die while you debate whether saving them is worth the cost. Dangerous is caring more about looking civilized than doing what's right. The chamber erupted in clicking, humming, and chittering. The High Mediator pulsed urgently to restore order. Commander, please control yourself. No, Wu said flatly. You asked us here to explain ourselves. Fine, here's the explanation. Humans will fight when others won't. We'll take risks that terrify you. We'll pay prices you consider unacceptable. And we'll keep doing it because it's the right thing to do. If that makes us barbarians in your eyes, then so be it. A new presence entered the chamber. The Velmer Ambassador Illith floated in on a mobility platform. His pale face was streaked with exhaustion, but his eyes were bright. Council, I speak for my people when I say the humans are heroes. They came when no one else would. They fought when victory seemed impossible. They lost their own people to save ours. He turned to face Yuri. The Velner Republic owes Earth a debt that can never be repaid. The High Mediator dimmed slightly. Ambassador Illith, your gratitude is noted. However, the question remains whether humanity's approach to warfare is compatible with Council principles. Kang stepped forward. Then let me ask the Council a question. If the Krell attacked your homeworld, who would you call for help? The species that fight with precision and minimal force? Or the species that will do whatever it takes to win? Silence fell over the chamber. It was an uncomfortable question, one that forced them to confront their own fears and prejudices. The truth was that every species there knew the answer. They just didn't want to admit it. The Thorian representative stood, his massive form dominating the chamber. The Thorian Empire has fought the Krell before. We lost 40,000 warriors in that conflict. The humans lost 23 and achieved a complete victory. He looked around at the other representatives. Perhaps we are not the ones who should be questioning their methods. Perhaps we should be learning from them. The High Mediator pulsed rapidly, a sign of deep consideration. The Council will deliberate on this matter. However, given the successful outcome of the Sara Prime operation, we propose a new role for humanity. Earth would serve as an emergency response force, deployed only when facing extinction-level threats that other species cannot handle. Kang smiled slightly. And what would be the terms of this arrangement? You would operate under Council oversight, responding only to authorized requests for aid. No, Kang said firmly. If you want humans to risk their lives saving yours, then we do it our way. We retain operational independence. We decide how to fight. You just tell us who needs saving? The Dorvathi ambassador's wings buzzed in agitation. That is unacceptable. We cannot give Deathworlders unlimited authority. Then find someone else to do your dirty work, Yuri said coldly. My crew didn't sign up to be controlled by people who wouldn't risk their own soldiers to save lives. The chamber erupted again in debate. Arguments flew back and forth in dozens of languages. But Kang noticed something interesting. The smaller species, the ones who didn't have powerful militaries, were watching the humans with hope in their eyes. They were the ones who needed protection. They were the ones who would benefit from Earth's willingness to fight. Finally, the High Mediator spoke again. We will agree to your terms with one condition. Human forces will only be deployed for extinction-level events. No political conflicts. No territorial disputes. Only when a species faces total destruction. Kang looked at Yuri, who nodded slightly. Then at Wu and Sue, who did the same. Agreed. Earth will serve as wardens of the Rim, When you need Deathworlders, you know where to find us." Later that night, Yuri stood in the observation deck of the Indomitable, looking out at the stars. Behind her, the door opened. Lieutenant Hannah entered, carrying 2 drinks. "Thought you could use this, Captain." Yuri accepted the glass and took a sip. It was whiskey, saved for special occasions. "Did you hear? 3 more species have already requested human security contracts. The Mivrine traders want us to escort their convoys. The Quellan scholars, the same ones who called us barbarians, want to study our training methods." Hannah smiled. "We scared them, but we also impressed them. That's the thing about being from a death world. People don't know whether to fear you or hire you." "Both, probably," Yuri said. She thought about the memorial wall in the ship's cargo bay, where 89 names were now carved in metal. Every single one a person who had volunteered to save strangers. Every single one a hero. "Do you think we did the right thing?" "We saved 2 million lives, Captain." "How is that not the right thing?" 6 months after the Sara Prime, Captain Soong stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned destroyer Perseverance, watching as his crew ran through final system checks. The ship was fresh from Earth's orbital shipyards, built specifically for the Deathworld Defense Initiative. It was faster than the Indomitable, better armed, and carried a crew of 900, including 50 Velner advisors who had volunteered to serve alongside humans. "All systems green." "Captain," Lieutenant Yoon reported from the tactical station. She was young, barely 25, but she had trained under Commander Wu himself. Her record was spotless, her skills exceptional. "We're ready for patrol duty?" Soong nodded. In the 6 months since the Council had designated Earth as the emergency response force, humans had deployed 3 more times. A mining colony under attack by automated war machines. A research station threatened by a quantum anomaly. A passenger liner trapped in a decaying orbit. Each time, human crews had solved problems that other species said were impossible. The success rate was perfect, but Soong knew that perfection couldn't last forever. The communication panel lit up with an urgent signal. The encryption was Thorian military, highest priority. Soong felt his stomach tighten. The Thorian Empire was the most powerful military force in the galaxy. They had never asked for help. Never admitted weakness. Until now. "Captain Soong of Earth Defense Command," a deep voice growled. It was the Thorian Emperor himself, speaking directly across the quantum channel. "The Krell have returned. They are attacking Theraxis, our core world. Our fleets are holding them, but barely. We request assistance." The bridge crew fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. The Thorians were proud warriors who valued honor above all else. For their emperor to ask for help meant the situation was desperate. "Your Majesty," Soong said carefully, "how many Krell bioships are we facing?" "Initial estimates show 300 vessels. Surface forces number in the millions." "And Captain, they have a queen. The hive consciousness itself is on our world." Soong felt ice in his veins. A Krell queen had not been seen in 400 years. The last time one appeared, it took 7 species working together to drive it away. Hundreds of thousands had died in that battle. "We'll be there within 18 hours, Your Majesty. Hold your position." After the channel closed, Soong immediately contacted Earth within minutes. He had authorization to deploy 5 battle groups. The Indomitable under Admiral Yuri Nam, promoted after the Sara Prime, the Valiant and Tempest, the frigates that had fought in the first battle, and 2 new heavy cruisers, Dauntless and Unyielding, total deployment, 4,300 human personnel. Plus, for the first time, integrated alien support, 200 Velner technicians. 50 Thorian heavy armor units who had specifically requested to fight alongside humans. Even a handful of Quellan observers who wanted to study human combat psychology. Commander Wu, who had retired to become a trainer, volunteered to return to active duty. "You're going to need experience with Krell tactics," he told Soong simply. "And I'm not done fighting yet." The fleet assembled in orbit around Earth, a sight that would have been impossible just 7 months ago. Human ships and alien vessels flying together under the emergency response banner. Ambassador Kang watched from the orbital platform, feeling a strange mix of pride and fear. "They're going to fight a Krell Queen," he said to Dr. Sue, who stood beside him. "They fought a swarm and won," Sue replied. "They'll find a way." The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, crossing the distance to Thorian space in less than a day. When they dropped back into normal space at Thraxis, the sight that greeted them was carnage. Thorian battle stations burned in orbit. Bioships the size of small moons pulsed with evil light. And on the planet below, a massive dark shape moved across the northern continent. The Queen herself, easily 5 kilometers long, a living mountain of teeth and claws and hunger. Admiral Yuri Nam stood on the Indomitable's bridge, analyzing the tactical display. She had been promoted, but she hadn't changed. Still sharp, still focused, still willing to do whatever it took to win. "All ships, battle formation Delta 7. We're going to clear a path to the surface. Commander Wu, your teams will drop directly onto the Queen's position." "Understood, Admiral," Wu's voice came back. He was on the Perseverance with Captain Sung, preparing the strike force. "We've got 500 Marines ready for deployment, plus the Thorian heavy units. They're eager to defend their homeworld." Lieutenant Yoon pulled up detailed scans of the Queen. "Admiral, she's protected by a biological shield that regenerates almost instantly. We can't hurt her from orbit. Someone needs to get inside that shield and destroy her from within." "That's what we do best," Wu said grimly. The battle for Thraxis lasted 3 weeks. It was the largest military operation humans had ever conducted, and it tested every lesson they had learned. The bioships in orbit fought with desperate fury as if they knew their Queen was threatened. The Indomitable took heavy damage, her hull scarred by organic weapons that ate through metal. The Dauntless lost her entire port weapons array, but kept fighting. On the surface, Wu led the combined human-Thorian force through hell itself. The biomass around the Queen was thick, alive, hostile. It spawned warrior forms constantly, an endless tide of claws and teeth. The Thorian heavy units proved their worth, their thick armor and powerful weapons cutting through Krell lines. And the human Marines adapted, learned, improvised. Private Han, now Sergeant Han after his promotion following the Sara Prime, led a squad that included both humans and Thorians. He watched with respect as the Thorian warriors fought with honor and fury, never retreating, never surrendering. "They fight like us," he told his unit. "Deathworld tactics." One of the Thorians rumbled in agreement. "We are beginning to understand why the galaxy fears you, human. You do not fight for glory or territory. You fight because it needs to be done." "That's the only reason worth fighting for," Han replied. They pushed closer to the Queen. Fighting for every meter of ground, Dr. Sue had developed new weapons specifically for this battle. Plasma charges enhanced with biological agents that would disrupt the Queen's neural systems. The strike team carried 20 of these charges, enough to kill something 5 kilometers long, but getting close enough to plant them was another matter. The Queen was intelligent. She knew what they were trying to do. She spawned defender forms unlike anything they had seen before, creatures the size of tanks with armor that could stop railgun rounds. Lieutenant Yoon, commanding from orbit, watched helplessly as the strike team's progress slowed to a crawl. "Commander Wu, you're not going to make it at this rate," she reported. "The Queen is spawning defenders faster than you can kill them." "Then we need a distraction," Wu replied. He looked at the Thorian commander, a massive warrior named Krath who carried a plasma cannon bigger than most humans. "Can your heavy units keep these defenders busy while my Marines plant the charges?" Krath's eyes glowed with battle fury. "The Thorian Empire does not retreat. We will hold them as long as you need." What followed would be remembered in both human and Thorian military history as the stand at the Queen's shadow. 50 Thorian heavy units formed a defensive line and simply refused to move. They fired their weapons until the barrels glowed red. They fought hand-to-hand when ammunition ran out. And they held, buying time for the human strike team to reach the Queen's body. Wu and 12 Marines climbed the Queen's massive form, using climbing gear to scale her chitinous armor. The surface of her body was alive, spawning defender forms right in front of them. They fought their way up, planting charges at neural cluster points that Dr. Su had identified. Sergeant Han planted the final charge at the base of the Queen's head, where her primary brain cluster pulsed with bioluminescent light. As he activated the timer, a claw burst from the flesh beside him. A defender form, birthed from the Queen's own body, slashed at him. Han's armor took the hit, but he stumbled, lost his grip, began to fall. Commander Wu caught him, pulling him back up. "Not today, Sergeant. We're all going home." They ran. Behind them, the charges began detonating in sequence. The Queen screamed, a sound that could be heard across the entire continent. Her massive body convulsed, thrashing. Krath and his Thorians held their ground even as the Queen's death throes threatened to crush them. The final explosion was visible from orbit. The Queen's primary brain cluster simply ceased to exist. Her body, suddenly without a controlling intelligence, began to collapse in on itself. Across the planet, every Krell warrior stopped moving. The biomass began to decay. The bioships in orbit started drifting. Their pilots dead, Admiral Yuri Nam watched from the Indomitable as the battle ended. Her fleet had lost ships. Her crews had taken casualties. But they had won. Against impossible odds, against an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, they had won. The final count was sobering. 89 human personnel dead. 370 wounded. 32 Thorian heavy units lost. One entire frigate destroyed. But Thraxis was saved. The Thorian Empire survived. And the Krell Queen, the nightmare that had spawned a million horrors, was dead. The Thorian Emperor himself came to the Indomitable to meet with Admiral Nam.